Hi everyone, my name is Megan Soun, and today I'm going to be talking about navigating parental aging for adult children. Dealing with aging parents is a really hard process. There's emotional, practical, relational challenges that all come up and all sorts of feelings. So I want to start by just asking you all a question of what comes up for you when you think about aging parents. Today I want to talk about a couple of the most common things that I've noticed arise when people are dealing with their aging parents. So the first is guilt. I think there are just so many expectations for folks as their parents age, and these can be spoken and unspoken. Things like what caring for your parents should look like. Maybe it's expectations of whether or not to live with them, or wanting to get to know your parents better as you feel time with them is getting cut short, or even things like dealing with medical care professionals. These expectations can come from a myriad of sources. Maybe they come from your parents themselves, or their siblings, or your siblings. Maybe they come from within, from culture, sometimes even just different circumstances. So for example, geography. If you have siblings but you're the one who lives closest to your parents, maybe that puts unspoken expectations on you to do more. Or if, say, you are single and your siblings are married or have kids, sometimes that there's sort of an unspoken sense of, well, because you're single, you have the most time, so you should be the one taking care of family. So there's all sorts of expectations that can come into play. So I really want you to think about what are the expectations that you hold when it comes to caring or caregiving for your aging parents, and to think through the sources of each of these expectations. Then what I want you to do is I want you to just reframe some of those expectations. So for example, if your expectation is I should call every day, and you're just feeling like you don't have the capacity to do that because there are other things going on in your life that matter to you too, maybe a reframe of that could be, I want to stay connected, but daily calls aren't sustainable, so I'm going to do a weekly call. So shifting your expectations in ways that still honor maybe your values or your desires while also taking care of yourself. Another common emotion that comes up when navigating aging parents is feeling out of control. There's so much in this domain that we face that can be out of our control. Things like the health status of our parents, whether that's mentally or physically, what our parents do, their behaviors, the list goes on and on. And so I think it's really important to be really attuned to what our limitations are and to seek to honor those limitations. So I want you to think about what is in your control and what's out of your control. And for those things that are out of your control, say the happiness of your dad, I want you to think about what the limitation is that's connected to that element that's out of your control. So for example, if it is the happiness of your dad, maybe the human limitation is that we don't have total control over other people's feelings. And what I want you to do is I want you to make fists and open your palms as you consider that expectation that's out of your control that you might want to release. And then I want you to keep your palms open as you imagine receiving and honoring that limitation connected with that out of control expectation. And then the final feeling I want to discuss is grief. Grief is a really common emotion that comes up in this area, and there's actually so many different forms of grief. We won't even cover all of them today, but some of the examples of grief are things like anticipatory grief. So this is grief ahead of the actual loss. So maybe you have a parent that's been sick for a long time, so you are grieving certain things along the way as you imagine losing this person. Or there can be ambiguous grief. Sometimes grief is complicated. So ambiguous grief is where there's a sense of loss that's not actually associated with the death itself. So an example of this is maybe you have a parent who's dealing with dementia. So there's a psychological loss even though the person is still physically present. So that's ambiguous grief. Another example is secondary loss grief. So this is grief where maybe there's a primary grief like losing a loved one, but then secondary loss grief are all the additional things you might lose on top. I think one of the things that can be most helpful as we grapple with grief is honoring our losses and really naming them. And so I encourage you to create a actual keepsake box or one that you just draw, and what I want you to put in it is just things that will help you honor your losses. So maybe these are memories you'd like to cherish regarding your parent, or maybe there are certain aspects of your parents that really have been meaningful to you that you want to hold on to, or physical, tangible mementos that are important. Whatever it might be, this box can be a way of honoring some of the grief that comes along in this process. Then the final thing I want to talk about today is self-care. So self-care is a concept that's thrown around a lot these days. And the way I like to think about it is self-care is intentionally caring for your holistic self, your holistic well-being through choices that honor who you are. So self-care actually looks different for different people, and there's tons of different domains of self-care. There's physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, work, relational. There's so many different ways you can think about self-care. So what I want you to do and what I invite you to do is to think about what maybe are some of those domains that you feel would be most helpful for you in honoring your holistic well-being. Maybe it's the social side, maybe it's the physical side. And I want you to identify those areas and then just choose one or two maybe activities that you can do to support that area of self-care. So thank you so much as you navigate this tricky season of dealing with aging parents. I hope some of these things can give you a sense of solidarity with other folks dealing with this, as well as tools to navigate this complex time. Bye-bye.